I usually get a real warm, fuzzy feeling as I prepare these lessons and record them, and not today. Oh, Daniel 11. One of the most difficult chapters in the Bible, in my opinion. And I have never truly gone through Daniel in this kind of detail. So it's been very frustrating for me. But I'm glad I muddled through it. And tonight I want to start sharing Daniel 11. Now, I promise you I will not get through Daniel 11 tonight. And next week I'll include the last half of Daniel 11, probably less than half, and into the Daniel 12 lesson. And that will probably take 2 weeks. So Daniel 11 and 12, 3 weeks. Daniel 10 was part of the same vision. So that's 4 weeks on these 3 chapters, all of which are Daniel's last vision recorded in his book. So buckle your seat belts, put on your steel-toed shoes, better get something to drink and maybe to munch on, because we're going to battle. Literally. So, and like I just said, Daniel 10 leads right into Daniel 11. In fact, if you just read Daniel 11 all by itself, verses 1 and maybe 2 don't make sense. You need to read the end of Daniel 10. I'll help you with that tonight. Daniel 11 contains what's been called by many the most detailed prophecy in Scripture. It covers a period of almost 400 years, and very accurately. So are you ready for a history lesson? I'm going to try and keep it interesting, and I promise you I cut out a big chunk of the history that I wrote into this, because I thought that's pretty boring even to a geek. So this chapter begins with, I'm going to give you an outline, an overview of the chapter. It's that detailed. This chapter begins with Persia, and then it tells of Persia's attack on Greece and the following attack from Greece onto Persia. And it tells about the Greek kingdom being split into 4 parts. And the next to the last section talks about the 200 years of war with the Ptolemy and Seleucid empires. Yeah, I'll tell you who they are. Just wait. Persia and Egypt. Don't tell anyone. The end of this chapter is about the end times. Tribulation, think Revelation, and the final war at Jerusalem. And many end time specialists will definitely spend a great deal of time on Daniel 11 and 12. 10 too, a little bit. So Daniel's vision is so accurate that many refuse to believe Daniel wrote these last 3 chapters in the book of Daniel. They claim these chapters must have been written about 400 years after Daniel's life, just because they are so accurate. And Daniel basically forecasts these 400 years. Of course, you know what I believe. I believe the Bible, always. Besides, people, remember, God created time. Read Genesis 1. It was morning, it was evening, it was the first day. Morning, evening, second day. He created time right there. And God exists outside of time since he created it. And therefore, he can see all the events in the world at the same time. He can see Adam and Noah and David and Paul and you and me and the end times, all at the same time. So when God shows someone what will happen, you had better believe God knows what will happen. So let's see what God knows and shared with Daniel. So verse 1, during the reign of Darius the Mede, I have stood beside Michael to help and protect him. Who's standing there? got to read chapter 10. At the end of chapter 10, the angel told Daniel he was battling the demon helping Persia when he came to help Daniel. He also said at the end of chapter 10 that the angel Michael, whom most Christians call an archangel, was actually Daniel's protector, and he had come to help Michael. Daniel must have been under some pretty good spiritual attack, don't you think? And last week I talked about Frank Peretti's books, Spiritual Warfare. If you want to understand spiritual warfare, Daniel 10 and Frank Peretti, two great places to go. So verse 2, I will tell you the truth, and this is the angel speaking. 3 more Persian kings will rule, and they will be succeeded by a 4th king that will be far richer than the others. He will use his wealth to bring everyone against the kingdom of Greece. Now, this was during the reign of Darius, and Daniel was told there would be 4 more kings of Persia. The first 3 of those kings were Cambyses. The second one was Pseudo-Smyrtus. The third one was Darius the first. And the 4th king was Xerxes the first. A mighty king indeed. And those 4 kings are historical facts, people. And they match up with just what Daniel's saying here. Verses 3 and 4, then a mighty king will come to power. His power will be so great that he will be able to do anything he wants. This is Xerxes. However, his kingdom will be divided into 4 parts toward the 4 winds. His kingdom will not be given to his descendants. His kingdom will no longer have the great power he enjoyed. His kingdom will be given to others. All right, so King Xerxes I ruled all of the Middle East and Northeast Africa and a little bit more. He had what was perhaps the largest army ever assembled up to that time, at least the largest we ever find in any historical documents. He invaded Greece, and this is a proven historical fact. Think battle at Thermopylae, the 300 Spartans, which they actually had a few thousand Hellenistic Greeks with them, but the 300 get credit. Because the pass at Thermopylae wasn't wide enough for even 300 men at a time. So, but there's a lot more detail. I mean, Xerxes conquered Athens, but he was defeated in the Battle of Salamis, a naval battle. So, after that battle, he returned to Persia. And if you want to understand just how great Xerxes was, read the book of Esther. Or go back and read about how great King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon was in Daniel's book. And then realize the Persians conquered Babylon. And not too long after Nebuchadnezzar died, so he didn't have time for his kingdom to fall apart. The Jewish historian shared a story that I got to share with you. I love it. Josephus records an encounter between Alexander and the Jewish high priest, Alexander the Great. Okay, and this is in the Antiquities of the Jews, book 9, chapter 8. Josephus was a great historian, highly respected and considered very accurate. It says Alexander often allowed his army to plunder cities he had conquered, but before he came to Jerusalem, he had a dream. In his dream, he saw the high priest and others coming out of the city to him in white garments. As he approached the city, the dream was fulfilled. The high priest and others came out of the city to greet him, and they were all wearing white garments. The high priest showed Alexander the prophecies in the book of Daniel about a mighty Greek ruler that would conquer Persia. Alexander assumed this referred to him. It did. He was so pleased by this that he offered sacrifices to God in the manner prescribed by the high priest. He believed it was a sign from God of his coming victory. He was on his way to attack Persia, by the way. And so Alexander spared Jerusalem and continued his conquest of the Persians. Oh, I love that story. Alexander's kingdom was divided into 4 parts when he died rather suddenly from a fever. Alexander the Great died from a fever. You never know. He was not, and he was fairly young, relatively speaking. He was not succeeded by someone from his own family. And there's good reason. You have to go research it, but they weren't exactly good choices. His kingdom was divided into 4 parts, like Daniel says, to the 4 winds, each going to one of his 4 generals. One of those kingdoms was north of Israel. Another one was south of Israel, and that's going to be significant. I'll come back to that. Just a reminder that Daniel's vision is given based upon Israel's perspective. They didn't really care about east and west. East was not even close to Israel. West was not even close to Israel. It's not like it was on the borders of Israel. We're talking Asia Minor and Greece, and that was west. East was the northern part of modern-day Iraq and Iran, over to India, but not into India. Yeah, Alexander the Great stopped on his way to conquer India because of various problems. Anyway, so those 2 kingdoms, the north and south of Israel, shadow on my face, those 2 kingdoms fought for 200 years. One side would be stronger, and then the other side would be stronger. They attacked each other several times. Can you follow a ping pong ball or a tennis ball? Each time their armies would devastate Israel as they marched through Israel's territory. Again, I'll come back to that. Verses 5 and 6. The king of the south will become strong, but one of his own commanders will become even stronger than him. This commander will rule his kingdom with great power. Sometime later, the king of the north and the king of the south will form an alliance. The daughter of the king of the south will be given in marriage to the king of the north. But the king of the south will not allow her any power. The king of the north will not allow her any power, nor will he allow her father any power. She and all of her supporters will be betrayed. I had a slight typo there in my notes. North and south got mixed up. So it was Ptolemy II gave his daughter Berenice as a bride to Antiochus II, and their plan was for Berenice to take control of Persia, but their plan did not succeed. One of her relatives will become the king of the south, and he will attack the king of the north and all of his forces. He will be victorious, enter the fortress of the king of the north. He will seize the gods of the king of the north, along with everything of value, silver, gold, jewels, everything. All of it will be taken to Egypt. He will leave the king of the north alone for a few years. Now, the next king of Egypt was Ptolemy III, a distant relative of Berenice, and as Daniel's vision says, and he defeated the king of the north, which was Seleucus, whatever. Seleucus. As always, I will remind you, when reading ancient names that came out of other languages, pronounce them however you want. A lot of these languages are dead, and we don't know how they're pronounced. There are certain rules of the ancient languages. Greek, for instance, the consonants always slide to the front as far as possible. I hear a lot of medical terms that don't do that with Greek words. So when I pronounce it right, they correct me. That's okay. And as usual, and not something I point out all the time, but when he defeated the king of the north, Ptolemy III plundered everything of value from the defeated king's treasury and temple or temples. And I'll come back to this one in a bit also. But it happened all the time. Later on, verses 9 and 10, later on the king of the north will invade the kingdom of the south, but he will retreat back to the north. His sons will assemble a huge army, which will advance south like an irresistible flood, and they will advance right to the kingdom of the south's capital. Okay, more back and forth, and this is where I deleted a whole bunch of historical detail that is not important to us. If you want to study it, I can help you do that. Verses 11 to 13. That is when the king of the south will rally his forces to defeat the huge army of the north. When the army of the north is conquered, the king of the south will be filled with pride, buttons bursting proud. He will slaughter many thousands of the northern army, but he will not remain successful for very long. After several years, the king of the north will gather an even larger, fully equipped army, and he will return to the south. Whose turn is it to attack now? And fully equipped, this isn't in my notes, but I can tell you what that means. Their metal was not steel. So when they were doing sword fighting, those swords only lasted, a short battle, maybe 2 real short ones. And then they had carts full of more swords. And best warriors, they had their own sword carriers he would carry a bunch of swords, and he'd swap them out for you. So fully equipped, it includes swords, spears, wagon loads full of them, arrows, wagon loads full of them. That's what a fully equipped army meant in those days. All right, verses 14 to 19. During those times, many people, read that, many nations, will rise up against the king of the south. Violent people from among your own people, the Israelites, will join in this rebellion, but they will not succeed. But when the king of the north arrived at a fortified city, he built siege ramps and captured the city. Notice he didn't say where. Evidently, any fortified city he came to must have something good. So the forces of the south were unable to resist this massive army from the north. Not even their best troops had a chance. The king of the north will be able to do whatever he wants, and no one will be able to resist him. He will establish himself in the beautiful land of Israel. He will have the power to destroy Israel. He will make plans to use the might of his entire kingdom to make an alliance with the king of the south. He will give the king of the south his own daughter in marriage, planning to use her to overthrow the king of the south. But his plan will fail. After that failure, he will conquer many cities on the seacoast. But a commander from another land will defeat him and drive him away. He will retreat to his own country, but he will stumble and fall to never be seen again. All right, 14 and 19, what a bunch of notes. In this paragraph, there's a Hebrew word used that's translated by many translations, including the NIV, as beautiful land. Now, this is Hebrew text. The first part of Daniel was written in Aramaic, the last part in Hebrew. But remember, this entire book was written with Israel as the intended audience. So beautiful land to most people means where I am from or where my ancestors are from or where I want to live. Since most of the Israelites were captives in Babylon, beautiful land would almost certainly have meant Judah or Israel. So that is why in my translation, my paraphrase uses Israel along with beautiful land. And I kind of mixed it up in a couple of different places, slightly different. It's okay. It's a paraphrase. I can do it however I want. Just try and keep it real. So the Jews were aware of the prophecies in Daniel, but they would still rebel against the Ptolemaic dynasty, and they would fail. Now I want you to think about that. They knew what Daniel had written, which included Israel will rebel against the kingdom of the south and fail. So why did they still rebel? People ignoring what God has to say puzzle me. But don't be too harsh on the Israelites. Modern Christians ignore a great deal of what God commands and or warns. We do. Something to think about. Throughout human history, different thought. Throughout human history, almost every king wants to expand his kingdom and or conquer, then plunder other kingdoms. Why? Pride? Ego? Arrogance? All of those and more. What do you think? Well, one thing we know for sure, the Israelites were ignoring what God had written. Verse 20. So it's talking about the king of the north here. It says, his successor will send out a tax collector to collect enough to maintain the royal splendor. In just a few years, he will die, but not in anger or in battle. The successor to the king of the north. I don't have much to say about that. His successor will send out a tax collector to collect enough to maintain the royal splendor. I don't really believe it was about the king's royal splendor and palace. Call me a skeptic, but I think it was to maintain a big army. That's how all wars are funded. Taxes. Americans know that all too well. Every time we go to war, taxes go up. And we gripe, but the politicians don't care what we owe, how many trillions of dollars now in our debt. They don't care. They just keep bumping it up. Pet peeve of mine. Americans in general are not very good at managing our money. Some of us are. Not most of us. Not in general. Not compared to most countries. Another hobby horse I'll leave alone right now. Verses 21 to 24. The next king will be a despicable man who was not from the royal lineage. He will take over the kingdom by trickery. During his rule, great armies will be swept away, including a prince of Israel. He would make alliances built upon lies. He will have very few followers, but will still gain great power. When the richest regions feel secure, he will invade them and achieve what his fathers and forefathers could not do. He will spread the plunder and wealth to his followers. He will make plans against the fortified cities, but that will only last for a little while. Now, scholars agree that this despicable man was Antiochus IV. He was not the heir to the throne of the north. His older brother, Seleucus, was the king, Seleucus III. But Seleucus' son was the heir. Seleucus III was assassinated probably by Antiochus, since he assumed the throne almost immediately after Seleucus was killed. I mean, he was ready. He made his plans. Seleucus died, and he was, boom, right there. Antiochus acquired the throne by bribing people, flattering people, and deceiving people. Here's a little humorous tidbit. I find it very funny. Antiochus gave himself the name Epiphanes. I'm not sure how that one's pronounced at all. It's Epiphanes. In the Greek, it means illustrious. However, many Jews named him Epimanes, which means crazy man or madman. Epiphanes, Epimanes, close. And then Daniel's about to list off, a whole bunch of reasons why this guy was so despised. You can go read them for yourself in verses 21 through 24. And even 25 through 28. Speaking of which, let's read 25 to 28. He will gather a very large army to attack the king of the south. The king of the south will wage war against him with a very large army of his own. But the king of the south will not succeed because of all the deceit within his own people. They will try to destroy him, and his army will be overwhelmed, with a great many dying in the battle. The two kings will sit down to negotiate, but both of them are evil and will lie. But it will not matter, because the end will happen at the appropriate time. Second time we've heard that phrase. Hold on to it. The king of the north will return to his own country with great wealth, but on the way he will attack the people of God's covenant, Israel, doing a great deal of damage before returning to his own country. Now, Antiochus built an enormous, well-equipped army and then attacked Egypt. He did not find Egypt easy to conquer. And then, sat down, but in verses 29 to 38, which we're about to read, we find out that Egypt was assisted by Rome. It's not necessarily in the Bible here, but it is in the historical books. When Rome came and assisted with a mighty navy, Antiochus retreated home, gutting the nation of Israel on his way home. Do you think he was like a little boy? He got whooped, so he turned around and whooped somebody smaller so he could let off steam? So 29 to 30, at the right time he will invade the south again, but with different results. Ships of the seacoast will oppose him, and he will return home, taking out his anger on God's people of the covenant on the way. And that's what I was referring to. It says he will reward those who reject the covenant. So, yeah, that's, the devious guy. You reject your God, I'll reward you. What do you think? $50 per person? I don't know. 500, 5,000? I don't think it matters. I'm not going to reject God no matter how much money you offer me. $5 billion, I don't care. I will not reject my God. What about you? So, Antiochus built an enormous, well-equipped army and attacked Egypt again. He did not find Egypt easy to conquer, and then when Egypt was assisted by Rome, Antiochus retreated home. So in verses 31 to 32, it says, his army, he's in Israel, his army will desecrate the temple and abolish daily sacrifice. His army will set up the abomination of desolation in the temple. He will flatter and corrupt people who have violated the covenant, but the people who trust in God will be strong and able to resist him. Amen. Abomination of desolation. I don't have this in my notes. It's kind of a very King James terminology, and yeah, it's in the King James Bible. But it just means, the abomination means something that's just offensive, beyond offensive. Abomination of desolation. Desolation means destruction. That abomination symbolizes the destruction of the Jewish religion. And that's not in my notes. That's just a freebie. So here's what history tells us about Antiochus and the Jews. It says he killed 80,000 Jews. He took 40,000 Jews as slaves, and another 40,000 were put in prison. That's 160,000 Jews. Specifically, he hung parents who circumcised their sons, and he hung the circumcised child as well. He totally desecrated the temple, including the temple altar. He sacrificed a pig on the temple altar and scattered pig blood all over the temple. He even hung an image of Zeus in the temple. Zeus was a Greek god, and Antiochus was Greek, which goes back to his name, the name he gave himself, and the nickname people gave him. Those were Greek words. When he went south to attack Egypt, he beat down Israel. When he returned north from attacking Egypt, he plundered Israel. If Egypt defeated him, he was extremely violent in his attack on Israel. Israel got hammered by the kingdom of the south going north, by the kingdom of the north going south, but when they went back home. And by the way, if you ever heard of the rebellion of the Maccabees after the last book of the Old Testament, Malachi, and that was about 400 years BC, and before the birth of Christ, somewhere in the early part of those 400 years, in between the New Old Testament and New, was the rebellion of the Maccabees, or the War of the Maccabees, or the Maccabean rebellion, or whatever. Antiochus was the primary cause of that rebellion, especially what he did to the temple and the altar and the pig, because pigs were unclean to the Jews. So Israel was stuck in the middle of the battles between the Persians and the Egyptians. In those days, armies, as they traveled, they took food and animals as they wanted as they passed through a country. If they had a little spare time, they would loot a city, especially looting temples, because people gave to temples, so they always had gold, silver, jewels, other valuables. If their general bothered to conquer a city, they looted the king's treasury for sure, which always had more than any temple. That was just the way things were. This went on for over 200 years. I'm going to stop right there. I'm a little over 30 minutes. I will begin next week with Daniel 11, verses 33 through 35. And we will get into Daniel 12, which isn't much easier to teach than Daniel 11. But I love you, I appreciate you, and I do enjoy Bible study. So God bless you. Bye now.